Welcome back. This is Sahara TV. My name is Fungai Maboreke. With me now is Mr. George Mangene,
Yes.
and he's the Consulate General of the South Africa. Consulate General.
Yes.
Some of the major goals for fighting apartheid was to eradicate poverty,
Yes.
unemployment, and inequality. So
Yeah.
18 years later, how far is South Africa gone with this?
Well, I think our country has made tremendous progress, in that respect, and our government remains focused on poverty eradication. I think we have seen this through the provision of such as electricity for people. I think at this stage, in fact, our government provides electricity for about 86% of our population. We hope that this will continue to grow, as we go along. I think the idea is to make sure that we reach 100% quite soon. We've also seen our government engaging in the provision of housing where necessary and other public amenities or any public goods that we deem are fit for the development of our people. So in a sense, we've seen a lot of progress, but we continue to work hard, to try and address whatever challenges that we may be facing, to make sure that the upliftment and the betterment of our people continues.
Okay, and I think it's last month during an ANC policy meeting, President Zuma stated that most South African whites still control the economy. And to be precise, I'll quote, he says the structure of the apartheid era economy has remained largely intact, adding that the ownership of the economy is still primarily in the hands of white males as it has always been, further saying that the time has come to do something more drastic towards that economic transformation and freedom. So what do you think the meaning of this was and what are the intentions?
Well, I would say for me it sounds very self-explanatory,
Right.
in the sense that, probably the president meant precisely, what is stipulated in this particular thing, in the sense that we need to continue with the transformation process and the transformation of our economy. And I think that's what our government and that's what the ruling party, is currently focusing on.
Okay. And there's been talk of nationalizing the mines in South Africa. How far is this gone, and if at all it's still in the process? What are the procedures and
Well, the issue of nationalization may be a debate, within the ranks of our ruling party. But as a government and as a country, we don't have any policy on nationalization. And I think this has been advocated and it has been communicated, in different ways. So in a nutshell, there is no policy for nationalization within the South African government, and it is not a government policy. However, debates around what could be the best form of engagement in economies or in different sectors will always obtain in any different organization, or in this particular case, it may be so. The debate may be going on within, the ruling party, but that should indeed be separated from the fact that that policy does not hold in terms of our current government policy.
well, some economists have also warned that this would probably be a dangerous thing to rely on state-owned firms, since almost most of them have been mired in debt and management problems. So I would think that from the way it stands, most probably it's not the most favorable thing for the country.
You can never be categoric, when it comes to economic policy, in the sense that there are different forms of economic policies, there are different forms of engagements when it comes to, state participation within the economy, and they can take different forms. So I wouldn't want to generalize and say nationalization could be injurious to a particular economy, nor would I want to generalize and say any particular form of engagement, in a sense, takes to whatever. Our government is very particular in terms of how they would like to see our economy grow. That is stipulated and driven by the new growth path, which is a policy that the government has designed and devised to try and make sure that we basically reach the type of economic development that is requisite with the needs of our people and the upliftment of our people in South Africa. And in a sense, commentators and opinion makers will always have views about what any particular policy can bring.
Talking about the people, let's talk about the black economic empowerment. I mean, this policy was designed for disenfranchised blacks and has been usually criticized even by the ANC members themselves and mostly maybe labor unions. How has it been effective, in terms of doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Well, my understanding is that as a government, we have what we call a broad-based, black economic empowerment policy.
And how does that?
And it has achieved certain goals. It may have come short, in certain areas. And at this stage, our government is looking at the policy to look at areas that we can improve to try and ensure that we reach, the set goal, the initial goal of making sure that not only do we transform our economy, but we also empower those who were basically disempowered and who were excluded, by the previous, apartheid and, pretty much segregated, economic system of the past. And that is what the government is currently grappling with.
Okay.
So the successes have been achieved, and in a sense, we want to make sure that those successes cover in its entirety and satisfy the entirety of what we consider to be our objectives.
What has been the criteria in terms of doing this to empower?
The policy is very comprehensive and very diverse. I mean, I could take some hours just taking you through its provisions and through some of the codes that go through it. So, that could be a topic for another day, but it's a very clear policy in terms of its goals and in terms of what it tries to achieve. And I think there's a general agreement that this is a policy that is a necessity within a country such as ours, which has a history of inequality that was created by a very evil apartheid system.
Okay. And you wanted to speak more on trade and investment and economy generally. Is there any specific
issues
that you'd like to talk
Well,
about?
The message, which is what I really wanted to talk about, not the politics that we've been talking
about.
about.
It out of the way, so
Yeah. Well, just to basically say that, we're an emerging economy as South Africa, and as a result, we believe that there are various opportunities within the South African setup and within the region in general, and that the country is ready to do business. We found that opportunities exist in the various sectors of the economy, whether it be manufacturing, agribusiness, in the mining sector, tourism, and other important sectors. And as a result, we're encouraging people to look at South Africa as their preferred destination for investments. We do also export. We are to quite some extent an export-driven economy as well. And we do try to identify opportunities for South African exports in other parts of the world. In this particular case, as we know, the New York office is responsible for the Eastern Seaboard. And we do try to make sure that we facilitate our trade and investment relations with the rest of the Eastern Seaboard, and with the view that these are mutually beneficial relationships. So in a sense, for those who are interested in doing business in South Africa, we always want to tell them that the time is now. And it gives them an opportunity to engage in a very dynamic continent, in a very dynamic region that we believe will continue to see growth for the future. I think the current statistics do point out the fact that the African continent is geared towards, continual growth for quite some time. Over the past few years, in fact, the African continent has managed to average over 5%, whilst other regions have actually experienced a decline in terms of economic growth. And I think this in itself augurs well for the African continent. It augurs well for development within the African scenario in general. We also believe that we do have a critical role to play, as South Africa, in terms of contributing that, the rest of the continent also benefits and takes its rightful place within the global economic setup. And this happens through various mechanisms. We're part of the Southern African Development Community, which is part of the AU. And through these regional economic communities, we have also begun to see entrenched regional integration. We've also begun to see the benefits of cross-border infrastructure development. I think a good example could be projects such as the Maputo Development Corridor, which has resulted in continued trade, not only between ourselves and Mozambique, but also the neighboring states, as an example. And I think through the spatial development initiatives such as your Central Development Corridor, we are likely to see a continuation of and a deepening of regional integration that will not only ensure that our market sizes are bigger, but goods and the movement of persons, are just made that much easier. And we believe that that is very important also for intra-regional trade. And we've got a role to play for there. In a sense, it will also be important to also mention that through improved governance in the region, countries such as ourselves, South Africa, have got excellent regulatory frameworks for people who want to do business. And not only do we have a very good regulatory framework, we also provide incentive regimes, that resonate with the various sectors that we would like to grow as an economy. So that in itself is very exciting. So we continue to promote investments as we try to improve our growth.
And can you safely say that South Africa is still one of the powerful nations within the world?
Well, it would depend on what you mean. I believe that we've always been a partner, both economically, politically, and otherwise with other countries in the world. And I don't think anything has changed at all. I think we continue to do so. We continue to collaborate with our partner. And I think we continue to get better in terms of, the nature and the type of partnerships that we have with the rest of the world. I'm not sure if that's the type of power that you refer to. If it is, then it means that we surely, would remain, I would say, a very important player, in global, affairs, from any perspective, both as an emerging economy and, both as a, as a player, just generally in terms of global issues.
Okay. And in closing, I'd like you to maybe mention, to those investors that would like to work in South Africa, with South Africa, a special word from yourself.
Yeah, I think a special word is to say that, South Africa is ready to do business. The conditions are ripe for anybody who would like to do business in an environment that surely is very friendly towards investments. And not only is it friendly towards investments, but which also provides all sorts of possibilities for growth, either from a regional or continental perspective. We have the requisite infrastructure for those who want to do business. We have the necessary regulatory framework. We have incentive regimes, that will ensure that people, gain and benefit, appropriately from their business engagements with South Africa. But more than anything else, if you do business in South Africa, you'll also be guaranteed that the aftercare that is provided from any perspective, is quite good.